Well, time flies when you're having fun. It's our last video on user-defined functions. And we're getting pretty close to the end of our content, aren't we? Because we have one major topic left after this one, and that is exceptions in Python. Yes, so close to the end. It's amazing. All right, let's talk a little bit more about scopes in Python. I want to make sure you understand this, and we've got a couple of points to make that we haven't made so far about scopes, and we have a command we're going to share with you. It's called the global keyword, and you'll see why it's very important in a moment. And I want to bring this up with you because we're going to have at least one example in here of things not functioning like you might guess they would. And whenever that happens in Python, we want to make sure we provide guidance. Okay, but first up, let's check this out. We are defining a function called scope test. And notice inside of scope test, we're going to set x equal to 120. We're then going to call scope test. And I guess this is one of those examples where a lot of people would think, yeah, it's going to print 120. But what's going to happen here? Yeah, see, this variable is local to this function. So I think we're going to get an error message when we go to print x, because even though we called the function, x out here is not defined. Yeah, this is internal inside of our scope definition. Let's go ahead and run this thing. And yep, we got an error. So one of the things that we remind ourselves here with this example is the fact that we can set a variable inside of the function, but that is going to be private to that function, as we saw in this case. All right, so let's take a look at another example. Let's go the other direction, if you will. So let me show you my second example here. In this example, as you can see, we are going to define a scope test 2, and we're going to print the variable value is, and then print the value of this my underscore variable. Notice I'm setting it to 200 in my code. I'm then calling that function, and then I'm also going to print the value of my variable. So notice what's happening here. We are trying to feed a value into the function. Will that work? Yeah. So what do we expect to see here? Well, if we can indeed feed this into the function, we should see the variable value is, and we should have 200 here. And then when we print the variable, it should print to that value of 200. All right, well, let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. And look at that. It worked just fine. So as we can see from this second example, yeah, we can set a variable to some value. We can run a function, and the function can work with that value. And then, of course, we do our just printing the value outside of the function works as well, of course. All right, let's take a look at another example. And this one is our test 3 case here. Notice in this example, it's just like the previous, but this time we're doing something interesting. Inside of the function, we're setting the variable's value to 400. Let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. Yeah, look at this. So inside the function, it's now 400, but outside the function, it's now the 200. So notice it would have just accepted this value, but the value's been overridden. And we actually kind of covered this concept before. This is when I was talking to you about one value kind of shadowing another, is how this is referred to. All right, but now let me show you something that we can do to control this, because you would certainly want to be able to control this. So what I'm going to do is bring up our fourth case here and check this out. Here I say, all right, the my variable value is a global variable. So now what we're going to be doing is when we set it to the 200 here, and then we run this function, the function is going to pick up that external variable and it's going to reset it, if you will, to 400. So now we're going to get the my variable value at 400 in both places. Let's run it, and that's exactly what happens. So notice, we have control over this whole concept of variable scope thanks to the global keyword. Yeah, the global keyword here is saying, hey, look, we want the global my variable value to work with here. Yeah, pretty cool. So notice, we do have control in Python when it comes to scoping, thanks to that global keyword. And I hope you liked this review of some various test cases so that you can see just how, quite honestly, it can be a little tricky at first dealing with these scopes of our variables. Thanks for watching.